It's Jerome Braggs, and I wanted to come and do a live so that I could share with you a question that my guides asked me a few years ago that drastically changed my healing journey, the trajectory of my healing journey. And I think this question and what it brings up for you will be a game changer, or maybe a game changer in your own healing journey if you're dealing with some type of health challenge. So a few years ago, I was going through my health challenge, and I was doing everything that I knew how to do. I was doing the physical stuff like drinking the green juice, eating the plant-based diet, and getting more sleep and getting out in the sun more, and all of those type of things. And I was also doing the energetic stuff. I was working on loving myself more, and I was meditating and spending time in nature to elevate my frequency and doing all the inner work. And I was seeing improvements, but there wasn't the shifts that I was really wanting. And so I wasn't, I was in a space where I was kind of like, what's going on here? And why isn't my healing progressing past this certain point? And so I asked my guides, and this is what I usually do when I need more guidance outside of what I'm getting for myself. I'll ask a higher consciousness, which is my guides. And so how I do that usually is I'll go for a walk in nature, and I'll ask them a question before I go. And when I am in nature, I relax a lot. My energy relaxes. It kind of neutralizes. I lighten up, and my energy gets elevated because I'm looking out at the water, which I love, and I'm at peace with all the beautiful nature and the animals and things that I see. So my energy is in a very good space, and it's elevated and it's relaxed. And when we're in an elevated and relaxed state, energetic state, that's where we receive more guidance. That's how we receive more wisdom from the other side, if you want, or from our spirit team. So I did this. And as I was going for my walk in nature, I heard very clearly this voice came up from within me. And this is usually how I know this is the voice of my guides. And it came up from within me, and it asked a question. And this question was, are you really ready to be your healed self? Are you really ready to be your healed self? And I was like, at first I was like, yes, I am. I am. And I visualize it every day. I've been wanting this for years. Of course, I want to be my healed self. I'm ready for it. And they said, well, that's not actually true. You're actually afraid to be your healed self. You have a lot of fear about becoming that version of you. And because you have fear around becoming that version of you, you have kept yourself from receiving it, from manifesting it. And that was a huge, aha for me. And I started to really do some work then around looking at, where am I afraid of being that version of me, being the well version of me, right? And as I began to look into it, it was very clear that, yes, I was afraid. I was afraid to become that version of me. And so here are a few things that it brought up for me. So, for example, at the time, the healed version of me was going to be more public. He was going to be teaching, be doing things like this, letting his voice be heard. And at that time in my life, I didn't have a platform like this. I wasn't speaking around the world. And I had a lot of fear about how people would receive me and perceive my message in public. So the idea of speaking in public and speaking on stages and speaking to thousands of people, or even hundreds of people, or even tens of people, I had a lot of fear about that, because I felt that I would be rejected and I would be criticized, and I didn't want that, right? And I also knew that the well version of me had a bigger life. He was more visible. He was more seen. And at that time, the idea of being seen more was also very scary to me, because, growing up in my childhood, I got teased a lot. And I was ridiculed a lot, and I was shamed a lot, not from my immediate family, but from my peer groups and people outside, right? And so the idea of being vulnerable and sharing my story and talking about my story and healing and having people that are strangers to me and revealing these very, very vulnerable parts of myself was very scary for me. And I realized I was too afraid of that at that time. So I was rejecting stepping into that version of me because I was too afraid of it. And there were other parts, right, that I was looking at that were like, oh yeah, if I'm well, what are my parents going to think, right? My mother's a doctor. And my whole healing journey was kind of this conflict between the things that I was learning about the energetics of the body and energetics of healing, and the things my mother was trying to tell me were the right things to do, which were the allopathic medicine type of things, right? And so that kind of conversation about was I really ready to stand in my own truth? And even if she wasn't okay with it, and even if she criticized it and rejected it, right? Was I going to be okay with that? And at the time, I wasn't, right? And then also there was the fear I had around where, like, you know, if I was healed and fully well, would I face a lot of criticism from the medical community, right? That because I would want to teach what I learned about healing and what I learned about, you know, all throughout my journey about what it really takes to heal ourselves. But it was very different from what Western medicine was talking about. And a lot of it, they would criticize and reject and deny. And because I grew up in that realm, again, my mother is a medical doctor, Western medical doctor. So I grew up in that field, in that realm. So the idea of losing belonging from that and having them not just the loss of it, but having them actually attack me. And that's definitely what I have received in some areas. But having them attack my message or having them attack me and call me a charlatan or something like that, would I be okay with that? Would I be okay with not being liked in certain circles and losing approval? And at that time, that was a fear. And so I was seeing and became very aware that although I wanted to be well, the embodiment of the well version of me was fearful to me. And because that was fear-based for me, it wasn't something I could attract right now. Because I had different energies, right? I had a desire, but then I had a fear for the desire. And when you have opposing energies around something you want, it stops the manifestation of it from coming, right? So if you want something and you don't have fear around it, that thing begins to manifest pretty fast. But if you want something and you have a lot of fears around it, or you feel ashamed around the having of the thing that you want or something like that. If you desire something, but there's fears with it, it kind of blocks out the manifestation of it so it doesn't show up. And this was the big aha that I had, was I was doing all the right things, right? But I wasn't energetically in alignment with my desire. I was afraid of it. And the fear of it was keeping it from manifesting for me. So in order to heal, I had to become okay. I had to face those fears and dissolve them so that I no longer had the fear of rejection and public criticism. I no longer had the fear of whether my mother was going to be okay with my journey or not. I no longer had the fear of being seen. So in order for that, right, I was welcoming of and when I stopped having the fear, I started becoming excited about, oh my God, I can't wait to be the version of me that is out there sharing this. I can't wait to be the version of me that has to address the critics. I can't wait to be the version of me that has a larger platform and is sharing with a lot of people, and a lot of people see him and know him. So those were the kind of a shift that I had to make. And me working with clients all over the world now, like I've worked with people all over the world in their healing journey. And this has been one of the biggest things that I've found that has prevented people from healing. It is that you're actually something about your healed self, the version of you that will be healed. Like when you visualize your healed self, something about that version is scary to you because that version brings new challenges. That version is going to bring new challenges that you may not be facing right now in your life. challenges that you may have avoided facing, and may even be some of the cause for the root cause of why the disease is in your life right now anyway. Like, you're not really authentically expressing yourself. You're not speaking up for yourself. You're not speaking up about what you really believe. Again, this was definitely for me. You're not being, you may play small in spaces so as not to cause conflict. You may people please and not actually, prioritize your own self. And so there are a lot of things that the healed version of you is going to be very different than the version of you that's sitting here right now experiencing the illness. It's going to be very different. It's not just about that you're in a healthy body. It's about your way of being, how you're going to be expressing more of your soul in the world. And you've got to really look at, are you okay with that right now? What are the fears that you have around being truly healthy? A lot of times, some of my clients are afraid to become the healthy version of themselves because they know that when they're healthy, they need to leave the relationship that they're in. And they're afraid of that. The healthy version of them wouldn't stay in the same job that they're in. They wouldn't stay in the same work that they're doing. They would actually do more nourishing work. They would do more work that is aligned with their soul. And they're afraid of that, right? They may be making a lot of money right now. So some of my clients make a lot of money, right? And so they're making a lot of money in the job that they work in, but it's a soul-sucking job. They don't enjoy it. It doesn't allow them to express their authentic self. It's very stressful and draining, but it's making them a lot of money. And that money is allowing them to afford all the nice things that they have, right? And so they fear that if they become truly well and they have to leave this job, that they won't have all the nice things anymore. So a part of them is sabotaging the manifestation of I won't say sabotaging, I'll say, because it's really not a sabotage. There's no part of you that is out to get you. It's trying to protect you. So if you're afraid and you fear that this version of yourself is harmful to you in some way, then there could be a part of you that's going to keep you from harm, right? It's not because it loves you. So when we love ourselves, we do not put ourselves in harm's way. And so if you believe that the well version of you is putting you in harm's way in some way, then there will be a part of you that won't allow that to manifest. So you got to really look at, what are your fears around the life that the well version of you is going to live, right? When you visualize yourself well and you visualize yourself healthy, what are the challenges that come with that new version of you? Really get honest about that, and get honest about how you feel about that. Are you scared? Are you ashamed, right? And that's where your work needs to be. You've got to begin to dissolve those fears and those shames. And that may take a while. That's not going to happen overnight. That's a lot of times why people come to me and I work with them with how to dissolve and release those things. That's the work that I do with my private clients. But that's something you definitely are going to have to do. That was something I've had to do. And especially if you find yourself, you're doing all the right things. You're, again, getting the green juices in, you got the plant-based diet, getting in good water, you're getting in good sleep, you're spending time out in nature and in the sun, you're doing the energy work, you're doing the self-love work. You may have taken my Self-Love Academy. You may even have done some other things. And it's still not happening. And I would almost put a wager, not quite yet, but I would almost put a wager that one of the issues there is that you're not truly ready to be your healed self because you're afraid of it. And you got to shift from being afraid of that to being excited to become that version of you. Because once you become really excited about being that version of you, it's coming very swiftly. It's coming really, 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 really swiftly. But until you can get excited about that version, if you have any kind of fear, any kind of trepidations around it, anything like that, there's going to be something in your energy field that is going to prevent that from manifesting, because it's trying to protect you from what you subconsciously believe, is something that is harm. That is something that's going to harm you. So I just wanted to come on and share with you an aha that I had. I received this message from my guides a few years ago, and it really shifted my healing journey. I began to work with really dealing with the fears I had around being the well version of myself, because the well version of myself was a more fully soul expressed version. And if we're ill, I can promise you, especially if you have chronic illness or you have a disease, I can promise you, you're not expressing the fullness of your soul. That's why the disease has manifested. That's really the root cause of why disease manifests. We've not been taught that correctly. We've been taught that it manifests because of genetics. It manifests because of you didn't eat right. It manifests because all these other things. But the main reason, and when I say main, it's like over 90% of the time, the main reason why disease manifests is because somehow we are not expressing the fullness of our soul and meeting the purpose for which our soul came here into this lifetime to fulfill. And the well version of you is going to be a version of you that is meeting that purpose and that is expressing more of the wholeness of the soul, the unique soul that you are. And so you probably have some fears around that. There may have been fears that you've gained from some type of traumatization you had in your childhood. That was definitely my case. It may have been fears you've gotten from the socialization you received in the culture that you grew up. Also my case. It may have been just the fears you got in society. You know, society has a lot of narratives that keep us from being who we really are and from really following the inner guidance of our soul's purpose here. So why I'm saying this is because that's, no matter what the illness is or who you are, at the root is going to be something around that. Something around that your soul, instead of being fully expressed, there's some suppression of it somewhere. That instead of being fully fulfilling its purpose and having a life of deep bliss and meaning, there's some unfulfillment of it. You may be out of alignment with it in a way, and you're not doing things that actually feed your soul and nourish it. So the well version of you is going to require that. To become the well version of you, you've got to be more soul expressed, you've got to be more soul nourished, and you've got to be more soul purpose fulfilled. And you got to look at what fears you have that you picked up around, throughout your life that make you feel like that's not safe, that is going to bring you some type of harm or some type of loss, because that's usually where our fears are. Our fears are usually around, I'm going to lose something or I'm going to gain some type of harm. And that harm may be rejection, criticism, it may be punishment in some type of way. So you want to look at where those fears are and look at how you can dissolve those fears and look into really becoming excited about expressing your soul more, nourishing your soul more, fulfilling your soul's purpose more, and becoming that version of you. But you got to really look into and do some real work, do some visualization work. Like, that's why I really recommend spending 3 to 5 minutes every day visualizing the well version of you, because you're going to get information in that visualization and it'll help you realize what your fears are, because you're going to see, okay, so what does the well version of me look like? What do they feel like? What type of life are they living? What are they doing in their lives that I'm not doing today? What are they not doing in their lives that I am doing today? Right? And you're going to start to see, they move differently. They don't do this and they do this, and they do more of this and they do less of that. And that's going to help you kind of get a clearer picture into, okay, this version of me looks like this. And oh, wow, I kind of feel like they're more, I'm really introverted and they're more extroverted. What's my fears around that? Oh, wow, they speak up more for themselves. They have boundaries and they communicate that. What is that? Oh, gosh, what fears do I have around that? Wow, they're really... another thing I remember about the vision. So this is going back to my own, another example of my own. The well version of me was more expressive of his sexuality and his sensuality. So I could see him, taking very sensual pictures of him, like pictures with his shirt off and a lot of thirst trap type of pictures. And I was very afraid to be seen like that. at that time. I was afraid because I was ashamed of my body. And I was really feared that people would see me in those type of photos and they would ridicule me for not having the six pack and not having the perfect body and all that. And also I had fears around, being a spiritual teacher at the time. What would people think if I also was very embodied and expressive of my sexuality? Because we don't see that a lot in spiritual teachers. There aren't a lot of spiritual teachers who are out there very expressive of their sexuality and talking about sexuality and sensuality. So, I had a lot of fears around that as well. And, but that was very clear when I would see the well version of myself. He was very much that. He was very much, feeling sexy and feeling in his sensuality and letting that be known and letting that be seen and expressing that. And I had a lot of fears around that. And so that felt like something that wasn't all that safe for me to do. So I had to do work around that, right? And to express more of that and to be comfortable with that so that I could welcome the well version of myself in. So that's really it. That's kind of one of the things I wanted to share here was, are you truly ready for the healed version of yourself? And what fears do you have around that version? What challenges do you think that version of yourself is going to face that you're not facing right now? And what are the fears you have around those challenges? And there's your work. Your work is to dissolve those fears and become excited about becoming that version of you instead of afraid of it. And you'll start to see the manifestation of your wellness comes a lot swifter and a lot easier than it's been coming currently. So thank you for listening. As always, I love you. Now go love yourselves. Bye.